Right? I'll never forget a conversation with somebody who called social services child takers. Completely at odds with the views of social services, but that was their view. People went to their doctor for their 6 to 8 minutes of face-to-face time, and they'd say things like, I've got problems with my nerves. They wouldn't say, I'm suffering from an early onset bipolar disorder, and perhaps we might look at a range of options, including drugs. They used their language. And over a period of time, what I got to understand was that the major challenge of delivering services was that people didn't understand the services that were there, and even if they did understand, they were frightened of them. So we set about doing a whole range of research which looked at how do you engage communities in understanding what they've got, what they haven't got, and delivering services that are meaningful to them. And we discovered a number of methodologies. This took us a few years to refine an approach which was about how do you integrate with it, how do you enter a community, how do you get trust in a community, how do you use the skills and knowledge of that community to validate their experience and design services that are useful to them. So to cut a long story short, we designed something called Connected Care. And what Connected Care does is that it works with populations of between 12 and 15,000. It takes a slice of that population, it trains them in research methodologies, which sounds very complicated, but actually is very simple. It's just about talking to people. And there are certain rules about how we interact with those communities. One rule is we never correct people who use language that they understand and that we don't. So if somebody talks about, I have problems with their nerves, we don't correct them and say, no, 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 what you mean is that you have an underlying depression issue. We don't do that. And you'll be surprised, well, some of you won't be surprised, but you're surprised at how empowering that is. And we've designed a number of interventions that are reliable and repeatable. And we learnt how to do this by looking at some of the private sector techniques for understanding populations. So I spent some time with Tesco's understanding how they observe populations. And those of you will have noticed something about Tesco's that we applied directly to Connected Care. Are you still with me? Yes? Which is that the Tesco's near me sells 5 different varieties of basmati rice, right? Because I live in an area with quite a mix of ethnic populations. Tesco's down the road doesn't sell the stuff. But the methodology that Tesco's used to design those supermarkets is exactly the same everywhere, right? So that's the principle that we applied to Connected Care. We use the same methodology, we take a slice, what we end up with are services designed by and with people that integrate health and social care in ways that they understand and can use. And by the way, we also engage them in delivering those services. So we employ them. Most jobs in health and social care do not require a degree, NVQ level 3 max. Now, this sounds awfully to some of you like big society, doesn't it? Maybe? Yes? I think we designed in big society before big society was invented. And en passant, as I move on to the issue of working with the not-for-profit sector, the big society, people ask me what I think of it, so I'll tell you before you ask me. Not that you might not ask me anyway, I'll tell you anyway. There are 2 versions of it. Version 1 involves the rapid withdrawal of public spending and the reliance on voluntarism. I mean, I'm being crude to express this. Volunteerism, or to put it another way, kind people cycling across the village green, dispensing the milk of human kindness. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, this country has probably the highest rates of volunteering anywhere in Europe. Okay? We're certainly in the top 5 in the world. Right? The problem with it, the challenge is that kindness is not equally distributed across the country. And in areas where there is poor social infrastructure, It's not that people aren't kind, they just don't have the means to express it. They're too busy on the bottom rungs of Maslow's hierarchy rather than at the top. Version 1 has a real problem built into it, right? Version 2 of Big Society, which is where I'm at, states this: most people, even the poorest people, are better informed, healthier, and wealthier than they were in the days of Bevan and Beveridge, right? But we still provide many of our health and social care services as though Bevan and Beveridge were still kicking around. We do not create bespoke systems that speak to individuals unless they can afford it. In fact, I've always argued that what connects the rich and the poor is that both sets of people demand bespoke services, right? Version 2 is where Turning Point sits. And one of our innovations was the idea of connected care. So how does Turning Point and how does the not-for-profit sector work in this new world of health, social care, integration, cuts, efficiencies, etc.? How am I doing for time? I just need to ask. Okay, I'll say this and then I'll shut up. We form partnerships with a number of agencies. So we don't act in isolation. We currently have partnerships with Serco, and we're exploring partnerships with a whole range of other organizations where we can add value by doing things that they don't do in order to improve the lives of the people who are generally outside rooms like this. Now, we make the very, well, there's one thing we don't do, and that's CSR, corporate social responsibility. And there's a reason for that. It's not that I'm against it. I just think that if you're going to do business that improves the lives of people at a large scale, then do business. Don't rely on kindness in that sense. In order to work with Turning Point, we do a values alignment check. So we check whether our values align with yours, i.e. the people that we're dealing with, not necessarily the whole conglomerate of a company the size of Serco. We look at whether there's values alignment. We look at what the bottom line outcomes for our partner is, which if it's a private sector company, will involve something like maximizing profit. We don't pretend that's not a motive. And we look at the win-win. And we negotiate in a way that ensures that both parties leave the room looking slightly depressed. All right? You with me on this? And that's how it works. And I should say that Turning Point's journey isn't unique. There are other not-for-profit providers out there. And indeed, if you look at areas like substance misuse and indeed mental health, you'll find that significant chunks, I mean, over 50% of services for people with substance misuse challenges are provided by not-for-profit organizations. Okay. Mental health, significant provision of access to talk therapies is provided by not-for-profits.